Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday morning to you. Welcome to Wednesday Morning Manna. I am Elder Lexi Johnson, and this is your midweek alignment with heaven. As we usually say, this is not inspiration, this is formation. This is where we grow. This is where we grow disciples. This is where we mature in the word and align our lives with the kingdom of Yah, one passage at a time. Last week, we stood with Israel on the banks of the Jordan River and we heard Joshua's command to consecrate yourselves. Before Yah performed the miracle, he prepares his people, right? That's what we learned last week. So, even in your life, before the miracle, before the elevation, before the new assignment, before the new calling, whatever it is, Yah prepares his people. And so today we carry on in this journey. We are on week 2 of the crossing. And today's installment is called Carrying the Presence. Carrying the Presence. Okay. So let us continue. All right. So Israel has consecrated themselves. Okay. They've consecrated themselves, but they've not yet crossed the river yet. It still hasn't parted. Okay. The promise is still on the other side. And now Joshua gives them another instruction. He gives them another instruction that is just as important as the instruction that he had given them prior. And this instruction is to keep their eyes on the ark, right? To keep their eyes on the ark, because before Yah asks his people to move, he teaches them what to follow. Okay. All right. So we're in Joshua chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. I am reading from the NLT today, and it says, okay, it says, giving these instructions to the people. When you see the Levitical priests carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, move out from your positions and follow them. Since you have never traveled this way before, they will guide you. Stay about a half a mile behind them, keeping a clear distance between you and the ark, and make sure you don't come any closer. Okay, so very specific instructions here. And one of my favorite sentences in this passage of scripture is, you have never traveled this way before. Israel was entering unfamiliar territory, and Yah's answer wasn't to give them a map, okay? It was to tell them to follow his presence. So today's Hebrew word is Panim, Panim, and that means to face. It means face, it means presence, it means before one's face, right? So throughout the Old Testament, Yah's Panim represents his nearness, his guidance. It represents his relationship with his people. So they were instructed that they needed to seek his face, to seek his presence. Now, notice that Israel wasn't instructed to watch the river, watch the weather, watch the stars, watch other people, watch earthly leaders. They weren't told to watch any of that. They were not told to study the terrain of the land. They were told to watch for the ark. Okay. And the ark is a visible symbol of Yah's presence among them. The lesson here is absolutely timeless. Okay. When entering unfamiliar seasons in your life, you are to keep your eyes on Yah. We are not to keep our eyes on our circumstances. And I would dare say that not just in unfamiliar seasons of your life, but in every season of your life, right? So that brings me to my first point, which is presence before plans. Presence before plans. One of our greatest temptations is to ask Yah to bless the plans that we've already made, right? But Joshua teaches us something very different. Israel wasn't leading the ark was leading Israel. Okay. Now, if we sit and think about it, how often do we do the opposite, right? And I'll be transparent, right? And I can let you know that even in my mature old age, right? I am, I still often find myself like, oh my goodness, I have not consulted the Lord on this. I created my own plans. I set my own timelines. I made my own decisions, right? And then I've asked Yah to approve of them. And that's not the way that it goes, okay? Kingdom living never reverses the order, right? And that is what happened with me. Now, if you can relate, whether you're watching live or watching the replay, I want you to put a one in the chat, right? Have you ever reversed the order, right? So his presence always comes before the plans. Our direction, our guidance from him is going to flow from that closeness with him, from that intimacy with him. The safest place to be is not where everything makes sense, okay? Because as humans, that's kind of where we want to be too. Well, this just makes sense, right? And we have to remember that our ways are not his ways, our thoughts are not his thoughts, right? They're higher than ours, considerably higher, right? So the safest place is wherever Yah is leading. And in order for us to know where he's leading, we must be focused on him. Our eyes must be on him. Exodus chapter 33, verse 15, Moses says, if your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. Okay. So Moses understood something that we today must never forget, that success without Yah's presence is not success, not for the kingdom citizen. It will not last. Okay. So we must seek Yah first before we make any moves, before we make any plans, before we decide on any dates, before we put together any timelines. Um, we must get our instruction from him. Okay. Now, that brings me to point number two, which is don't rush ahead. Don't rush ahead. All right. Now, Joshua instructed the people to keep a respectful distance behind the ark. Okay. We can find that in verse 4. Okay. He gives the reason why they needed to stay a respectful distance behind, right? And the whole purpose of that. He said that they needed to see where Yah was leading. Okay. Sometimes our greatest mistake isn't moving too slowly. Sometimes our greatest mistake is moving too quickly. And waiting can be difficult for us, right? Because we just want to get there, right? I'm working on something now, and I'm like, I just want to just knock it out and get it out now, right? But y'all's timing is perfect. So we can't be ruled by our excitement about the promise, right? I've said before to those who have been following me for some time that we cannot be led by our emotions, right? And excitement, even though it's a good emotion, right? One that we love to experience, we can be excited, but we still have to move when Yah says move, because premature movement create some unnecessary frustration. Okay. So Yah's timing is just as important as his direction. So we seek him first, okay, for direction. We don't start moving and doing our own thing and then come back and get direction. No, we seek him first for direction. And then not only do we seek him for direction, but we also seek him for the timing. Okay. Oftentimes he will give us an instruction, but the timing isn't always as soon as he gives you the instruction. Oftentimes the timing is for a little ways away. It could be for tomorrow, it could be for next week, next month, a few months from now, next year, in a few years, right? So not every good opportunity is, and I say this all the time too, that we have to be careful, because everything that looks good doesn't mean that it's a God thing. Not every good opportunity is a God opportunity. We must wait on direction, and then we must wait on timing, right? Or move in the timing. Sometimes the most spiritual thing that we can do is wait until Yah says, now. Now is the time. Psalm 27:14 says, that that we should wait patiently for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord. Now, why does he tell us to be brave and courageous to wait, right? I'm sure many of us have never have when you think about waiting, you don't think about having to be brave and be courageous, if you're waiting in a line, or waiting for an appointment, for a day to come for a certain appointment. It's like, who needs to be brave and courageous during that waiting time? But in this kind of waiting, being brave and being courageous, this is the same instruction he gave Joshua in chapter 1, right? Which meant that he needed to stand, he needed to obey during the waiting period, to not move ahead, right? And to be courageous, because there will be pressure out there, or whether you're the one pressuring yourself or others are pressuring you to move and to do things that are not in the will of the Lord, or not in his timing. So waiting isn't inactivity. Waiting also includes trusting. Okay. Which brings me to point number 3. And that point is that intimacy produces direction. Intimacy produces direction. Now, Joshua told the people, you have never traveled this way before. It really is my favorite line out of this passage of scripture. And that statement still applies to us today. Many of us have never walked through the season that he is getting ready to take us to next, right? We've never done it before. So we may have never faced the exact circumstances. We may have never carried these particular responsibilities. We have never stepped into that type of assignment before. But the wonderful thing is that he has already been there. He is there, right? Because time, he's not bound by time. So he has already been there. He's already seen everything that's going to, go down. He already knows how he needs to navigate you in the new season, right? So nothing about your future surprises him at all, right? And many of us, including myself, can get very anxious about the future, right? What's to come? What am I going to be doing? Will I have what I need? We're worried about all kinds of things. And the Lord is saying, all I want is for you to keep your eyes on the ark. All I want is for you to keep your eyes on me, on my presence, because there's nothing about your future that surprises me, right? So the closer that we stay to his presence, the clearer direction becomes. I'm going to say that again. The closer we stay to his presence, the clearer direction becomes. Okay. So discernment isn't merely knowing right from wrong. Okay. We've talked about discernment before. Discernment is knowing right from what appears to be right, and it is recognizing Yah's voice in unfamiliar territory. That's what discernment is. Okay. Discernment is knowing his voice, hearing his voice, listening to him for that guidance, the timing of everything, right? Intimacy makes his voice familiar. You don't get to know someone's voice without spending some time with them, without talking to them all the time, right? There are some of you on here this morning, like good morning, Amanda, good morning, BC, good morning to others of you. There are these two ladies. I have gotten to know them over the years, right? It may not be super deep, but I've gotten to know them over the years. We've talked several times. If they were to call me and I answered the phone, I don't need the caller ID telling me who they are because I know their voice, right? And also, knowing the voice doesn't mean just knowing what it sounds like audibly. It also means that, you know what, that is something that Amanda would say. That is something that BC would say. Or no, that's not something that BC would say at all, right? So we don't, we aren't able to be discerning if we don't know his voice, right? So, in order to know his voice, we have to spend time with him. And the more time we spend in his presence, the easier it becomes to recognize his leading. We don't have to worry about, is now the time? Am I moving ahead of him, or I'm too slow, or whatever the case may be, because we have been spending time with him and we know his voice. John chapter 10 verse 27 says that my sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. Notice the progression, right? It's relationship first. And then through relationship, there is recognition. And then because you recognize, then there is a response. His sheep know his voice because they spend time with the shepherd, right? Now, as we've reflected throughout this series, Hebrew year 5786 has been a year of preparation. Okay. If you've been following me all year long, you should know this. Okay. This should not be a surprise to you. One of the greatest gifts that Yah has given us this year is discernment. Okay. And if your discernment has not increased, you are not spending time with Him. You are not spending enough time with him, okay? Because discernment this year is one of the greatest gifts that he has given us if you've spent that time with him. And it's not so we can simply identify deception, it's way more than that. It's also so we can recognize his voice. Discernment wasn't the destination, right? Discernment was the preparation for the crossing. Because when you've never been this way before, right? And the Israelites had never been that way before, they had consecrated themselves, and the Jordan River had not parted yet. They were getting instruction because they had never been that way before. And when we have never been away before, what we don't need is more opinions from the peanut gallery. Okay. What we don't need is everybody else's thoughts on how we should do it, when we should do it. We don't need everybody's thoughts. What we need is Yah's presence. Okay. So this week, I want you to ask yourself as we get ready to get out of here, am I following Yah's presence, or am I asking him to follow my plans? Which one is it? Right? Am I following his presence, or did I sit down and plan everything and now I'm asking him to bless the plan? Right? Where have I become impatient with his timing? Listen, I don't know about you all, but I can tell you every time that I've moved ahead of his timing, I have made a huge mess of things. Okay. So we cannot get impatient with his timing. And ask yourself this week, am I spending enough time with Yah to recognize his voice quickly? Okay. If you have to ask yourself, oh my gosh, I'm not sure. Is that what he said? Maybe he didn't say. If you're going back and forth like that, you need to get back in his word. You need to spend more time in prayer. You need to spend more time in fasting, all the various different ways that he gives us to spend time with him. You need to do more of. Okay. So this week, make sure to begin each day in prayer before making any decisions. Okay. Pause before rushing into new opportunities. Spend intentional time with Yah's face, seeking Yah's face, right? And trust his timing, even when you can't see the outcome. Remember that his presence is our greatest guide. All right. Israel crossed the Jordan before they followed. Um, Israel crossed the Jordan because they followed the ark, not before. They crossed the Jordan because they were following the ark. The ark represented his presence. They were not following the crowd. They were not following their emotions. They were not following their assumptions. They followed the presence of Yah. Okay. And as we continue our own crossing, remember that we don't have to know every detail about tomorrow. Okay. We don't have to know every detail about tomorrow. If you like me, I like to know everything. I want to know A to Z, right? But I've had to learn that I don't have to know every detail about tomorrow. All we need to do, we just simply need to stay close to the one who already knows the details about tomorrow. Okay? When his presence leads, his peace follows. Where his presence goes, we can walk there to that place with confidence. All right. I'll see you next Wednesday morning as we continue our journey through the crossing with week 3. And week 3 is going to be step before the waters part. Step before the waters part. Listen, God bless. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. And don't forget to join us on Saturdays as well as at 12:30 Eastern for our Rest and Rain Bible Study Hour. God bless. Thank you to those of you who joined live, and thank you to those who caught this on the replay. See you next time. Bye.